There are centrifugal tendencies from within and from without. One of them is inherent in technical progress itself, namely automation. I suggest that expanding automation is more than quantitative growth of mechanization, that is, that it is a change in the character of the basic productive forces. It seems that automation to the limits of technical possibility is incompatible with a society based on the private exploitation of human labor power in the process of production. Almost a century before automation became a reality, Marx envisaged its explosive prospects. Quote, as large-scale industry advances, the creation of real wealth depends less on the labor time and the quantity of labor expended than on the power of the instrumentalities, agentien, set in motion during the labor time. These instrumentalities and their powerful effectiveness are in no proportion to the immediate labor time which the production requires. Their effectiveness rather depends on the attained level of science and technological progress. In other words, on the application of this science to production. Human labor then no longer appears as enclosed in the process of production. Man rather relates himself to the process of production as supervisor and regulator. Wächter und Regulator. He stands outside of the process of production instead of being the principal agent in the process of production. In this transformation, the great pillar of production and wealth is no longer the immediate labor performed by man himself, nor his labor time, but the appropriation of his own universal productivity, Produktivkraft, that is, his knowledge and his mastery of nature through his societal existence. In one word, the development of the societal individual, des gesellschaftlichen Individuums. The theft of another man's labor time, on which the social wealth still rests today, then appears as a miserable basis compared with the new basis which large-scale industry itself has created. As soon as human labor in its immediate form has ceased to be the great source of wealth, labor time will cease, and must of necessity cease to be the measure of wealth, and the exchange value must of necessity cease to be the measure of use value. The surplus value of the mass of the population has thus ceased to be the condition for the development of social wealth, des allgemeinen Reichtums, and the idleness of the few has ceased to be the condition for the development of the universal intellectual faculties of man. The mode of production which rests on the exchange value thus collapses. End quote. Automation indeed appears to be the great catalyst of advanced industrial society. It is an explosive or non-explosive catalyst in the material base of qualitative change, the technical instrument of the turn from quantity to quality. For the social process of automation expresses the transformation, or rather transubstantiation of labor power, in which the latter, separated from the individual, becomes an independent producing object and thus a subject itself. Automation, once it became the process of material production, would revolutionize the whole society. The reification of human labor power, driven to perfection, would shatter the reified form by cutting the chain that ties the individual to the machinery, the mechanism through which his own labor enslaves him. Complete automation in the realm of necessity would open the dimension of free time as the one in which man's private and societal existence would constitute itself. This would be the historical transcendence toward a new civilization. At the present stage of advanced capitalism, organized labor rightly opposes automation without compensating employment. It insists on the extensive utilization of human labor power in material production, and thus opposes technical progress. However, in doing so, it also opposes the more efficient utilization of capital. It hampers intensified efforts to raise the productivity of labor. In other words, continued arrest of automation would weaken the competitive national and international position of capital, causing a long-range depression and consequently reactivate the conflict of class interests. This possibility becomes more realistic as the contest between capitalism and communism shifts from the military to the social and economic field. By the power of total administration, automation in the Soviet system can proceed more rapidly once a certain technical level has been attained. This threat to its competitive international position would compel the Western world to accelerate rationalization of the productive process. Such rationalization encounters stiff resistance on the part of labor, but resistance which is not accompanied by political radicalization. In the United States, at least, the leadership of labor in its aims and means does not go beyond the framework common to the national and group interest, with the latter submitting or subjected to the former. These centrifugal forces are still manageable within this framework. Here, too, the declining proportion of human labor power in the productive process means a decline in political power of the opposition. In view of the increasing weight of the white-collar element in this process, political radicalization would have to be accompanied by the emergence of an independent political consciousness and action among the white-collar groups, a rather unlikely development in advanced industrial society. The stepped-up drive to organize the growing white-collar element in the industrial unions, if successful at all, may result in a growth of trade union consciousness of these groups, but hardly in their political radicalization. Quote, politically, the presence of more white-collar workers in labor unions will give liberal and labor spokesmen a chance more truthfully to identify the interests of labor with those of the community as a whole, the mass base of labor as a pressure, as a pressure group will be further extended, and labor spokesmen will inevitably be involved in more far-reaching bargains over the national political economy. Under these circumstances, the prospects for a streamlined containment of the centrifugal tendencies depend primarily on the ability of the vested interests to adjust themselves and their economy to the requirements of the welfare state. Vastly increased government spending and direction, planning on a national and international scope, an enlarged foreign aid program, comprehensive social security, public works on a grand scale, perhaps even partial nationalization belong to these requirements. I believe that the dominant interest will gradually and hesitantly accept these requirements and entrust their prerogatives to a more effective power.